The knife taking the space station was quiet too quiet. Lights flickered weakly across the empty halls, and broken panels sparked in the dark. Dust floated in the air like tiny ghosts. It felt less like a place for life and more like a tomb. Daniel, a Terran soldier, moved carefully through the corridors. His boots echoed against the metal floor. In his hand, he carried his most trusted weapon, a combat knife. The blade had been with him through wars, through blood and fire. To Daniel, it was more than steel. It was survival. But tonight, survival felt thin. His team had gone silent hours ago. The station had sent a distress signal, but when the Terrans arrived, the halls were already abandoned. Something had happened here. Something wrong. Daniel paused at a corner. He heard it, a faint sound. Breathing, quick, uneven. Not the sound of soldiers, but of someone afraid. His grip on the knife tightened. He turned slowly. And then he saw her. At first, he thought she was a shadow. A small figure crouched against the wall, her body trembling. But when she lifted her head, Daniel froze. She was not human. Her ears, long and furred, twitched nervously. Her tail, bushy and silver, curled around her legs like a shield. Her eyes glowed faintly in the dim light, wild, sharp, and cautious. An alien girl. She stared at him, wide-eyed, and Daniel felt her fear like heat in the air. He raised a hand, showing he wasn't a threat. "It's okay," he said quietly. "I won't hurt you." But the girl didn't move. Her gaze wasn't on his face. It was on his knife. And before Daniel could react, she leapt. Her movement was quick, almost too fast for the eye. One moment she was crouched, the next she was on him. Her small hands grabbed his wrist, her tail whipping behind her for balance. Daniel staggered, shocked not because she was strong, but because she was desperate. In a single motion, she tore the knife from his hand. Daniel cursed and reached for her, but she had already darted back, light as air, the knife gleaming in. Her grip. She held it tightly to her chest, her sharp ears flicking with tension. "Hey!" Daniel barked. "That's mine." The girl's lips moved, her voice soft but firm. Her accent was strange, her words broken, but the meaning was clear. "Yours." "Now mine. Taken. Bond made." Daniel blinked. "What are you talking about? Give it back." She shook her head, clutching the blade like it was treasure. Her glowing eyes didn't show mischief. They showed something else. Expectation. Daniel stepped forward, careful not to scare her. "Listen, that knife is important. It's not a toy. I need it." But she lifted her chin, her voice steadier now. "In my clan, to take a warrior's blade is to test him. If he wants it back, he must prove himself. He must court." Daniel froze. Did he hear that right? Court? She wasn't just stealing his weapon, she was demanding something. A bond. He stared at her, disbelief in his eyes. "You've got to be kidding me." But she wasn't. The way she stood, the way she clutched the blade, it wasn't a joke. For her, this was real. Daniel felt a mix of anger and confusion. This was insane. He was trapped on a dying station, enemies possibly lurking in the dark, and now an alien fox girl was holding his knife hostage until he agreed to courtship. "Look," Daniel said, trying to stay calm. "I don't know your customs, but I'm not playing games." That knife, a loud crash interrupted him. Both of them turned. Down the hall, a metal door slammed open. Shadows moved. Heavy, clawed footsteps echoed closer. Daniel recognized the sound. The Vrek, raiders, hunters, the ones who had likely destroyed this station. The girl stiffened, her ears flattening. Her glowing eyes darted back to Daniel, then to the shadows approaching. She tightened her grip on the knife. Daniel's heart raced. He needed his weapon. He needed it now, but the girl's voice came again, steady despite her trembling. Fight with me. Prove yourself. Then the blade is yours. Daniel cursed under his breath. She was insane. But she wasn't wrong if they didn't fight together. They were both dead. The footsteps grew louder. Growls echoed through the hall. Daniel met her eyes. Fine, we fight. But afterward you give it back. The girl's tail flicked once. Her lips curved in the faintest smile. We see. And then the shadows burst forward. The strange proposal. The corridor shook with every step of the wreck raiders. Their growls echoed, deep and cruel, like predators hunting prey. Red lights flashed weakly across the metal walls, painting everything in blood-colored shadows. Daniel pressed his back against the wall, his pulse racing. He glanced at the alien girl, this fox-eared stranger who had stolen his knife. She stood ready, tail stiff, eyes glowing in the dim light. A knife glinted in her small hands, but she held it with the certainty of someone who had trained with blades her whole life. You sure you know how to use that? Daniel muttered. She looked at him, ears twitching. Better than you think. The footsteps grew louder, and the first wreck came into view, a massive figure, armored in jagged plates, its reptilian snout twisted into a cruel grin. Behind it, more shadows moved. Daniel's fists clenched. We don't have time for games. You want to test me? Fine, but we fight together. The girl's sharp eyes locked onto his. Her voice was quiet but steady. Then listen, Terran. My name is Liara, daughter of the broken clans. When I take a warrior's blade, I test if he is worthy. If he fails, he dies. If he lives, he proves himself. My chosen. Daniel's jaw tightened. He couldn't believe this. Chosen? You're telling me this is some kind of marriage ritual? Liara tilted her head, confusion flickering across her face. Marriage? No, bond. Warrior bond. Life bond. She placed the knife against her chest, above her heart. It cannot be broken. Daniel felt a shiver crawl down his spine. He wanted to laugh at the madness of it, but the growls from the wreck were too close. There was no time to argue. Fine. Daniel said through gritted teeth, You want a bond? Let's survive first. Then we'll talk. Liara gave a sharp nod. The first wreck charged. Daniel swung the broken pipe he had picked up earlier. Metal rang as he smashed it across the raider's helmet. The creature roared, staggering. Liara moved in a blur, slashing with Daniel's knife. The blade cut deep into the alien's throat, spraying dark blood across the walls. The others snarled and rushed forward. Daniel and Liara fought side by side. She was quick. Her fox-like reflexes let her slip under claws and teeth. Daniel was strong, every strike precise and brutal. Together, they moved like they had fought as one for years. Even though they had met only minutes ago, but the numbers grew. 3 wreck pushed them back into the corridor. Daniel swung hard, cracking another skull, but one raider's claw raked across his arm. Pain burned through him. Liara cried out, slashing furiously to drive it away. Stay close, she shouted. Daniel gritted his teeth. He had no blade, only the pipe. But Liara fought like a storm, her tail whipping for balance, her strikes wild yet sharp. Each time she cut, her glowing eyes shone brighter. After what felt like forever, the last raider fell, its body hitting the floor with a heavy thud. The corridor was silent again, filled only with Daniel's heavy breathing and Lyra's quick, sharp gasps. Daniel leaned against the wall, his arm bleeding. That was close. Liara stood straight, her chest rising and falling quickly. She still held the knife tight, refusing to give it back. Daniel eyed her. You going to return that now? She shook her head slowly. Not yet. You fought well, strong, but the test is not done. Daniel's patience thinned. Test? I nearly died, and you're still testing me. Liara stepped closer, her tail brushing against the wall. Listen, my people, the Vrek destroyed us. My clan is gone. To survive, I follow tradition. 2. Take a blade means to choose a warrior. If he proves worthy, he becomes more than ally. He becomes family. Her eyes softened for the first time. There was no arrogance, no trick, only loneliness. Daniel felt his anger fade, replaced by something heavier. She wasn't just playing a game. She had no one left. No clan, no protection. Taking his knife was her way of forcing a bond, of finding someone she could trust not to leave her behind. He let out a slow breath. Liara, you don't know me. I'm just a soldier. Her gaze locked on his. But you are alive, and you fight. That is enough. The corridor groaned suddenly. Sparks fell from the ceiling as the station shook again. More Vrek were coming. They could hear them moving deeper in the halls. Daniel pushed himself off the wall. Looks like we don't get a choice. We either keep running, or we die here. Lyra's ears twitched. She lifted his knife, its blade, catching the weak light. Then fight with me, Terran. Prove you are more than words. Daniel's lips curved in a half-smile despite the pain. Fine, but when this is over, you're giving that back. Liara tilted her head, her tail flicking once. We will see. The growls returned, closer this time. Together, they turned toward the darkness. For the first time, Daniel realized something strange. Maybe this bond wasn't about a stolen knife. Maybe it was about survival, and survival meant fighting together. Enemies in the shadows. The station was too quiet. That kind of silence that wasn't peaceful, but dangerous, like the air was holding its breath. Daniel walked carefully, pipe in hand, his boots crunching against broken glass scattered on the metal floor. Behind him, Liara padded silently, her fox-like ears twitching at every sound. She still held his knife, her grip firm, eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. Somewhere in the darkness, the Vrek were hunting. Daniel muttered under his breath, "They're not giving up. They'll keep coming." Liara tilted her head. "That is what predators do. They chase until the prey falls." Daniel gave a small, grim smile. "Then it's a good thing I'm not prey." Lyra's tail flicked once. She almost smiled back, but kept her eyes sharp on the shadows ahead. The corridor stretched long, with doors half open and wires hanging from the ceiling. Sparks crackled every now and then. It looked like a graveyard for machines, a place that should have been abandoned years ago. But every creak and every groan reminded them it wasn't empty. Then they heard it, a dragging sound. Claws scraping against metal. Daniel raised the pipe, heart hammering. They're close. Liara crouched low, knife ready. Her ears twitched, following the sound. Not one, many. The shadows shifted. 3 pairs of glowing red eyes appeared at the far end of the hall. The Vrek stepped forward slowly, their scales glistening in the faint light. They were bigger than the ones before, shoulders broad, jaws lined with sharp teeth. And they weren't rushing this time. They were stalking. Daniel's mouth went dry. He whispered, "They're playing with us." Lyra's voice was low, steady. "They want us to run. They enjoy the chase." Daniel shook his head. "No, running's not an option. We make our stand here." Liara looked at him sharply. "Here? Surrounded?" Daniel gripped the pipe tighter. His arm still burned from the earlier wound, but he ignored the pain. "Better to fight where we can see them than be hunted in the dark." The Vrek growled, their heavy steps shaking the floor as they came. Closer. Daniel took a deep breath, forcing his fear down. He remembered Earth. He remembered the faces of his people, those who had died under alien chains. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This was about never bowing again. He glanced at Liara. You said this was a test. Fine. But if we're doing this, we fight as one. Lyra's eyes widened slightly at his words. For a moment, she looked at him not as a stranger, but as something closer and equal. She nodded slowly. As one. The Vrek roared and charged. The hallway exploded with violence. Daniel swung the pipe with all his strength, smashing it across the jaw of the first raider. Bone cracked, and the creature fell sideways. But another clawed hand slammed into his chest, knocking him back into the wall. Pain exploded through his ribs. Liara leaped forward, knife flashing. She slashed across a Vrek's arm, spinning under its swing and driving the blade into its side. It howled, thrashing violently, nearly throwing her across the hall. But she twisted and landed lightly, tail whipping for balance. Daniel staggered. Up, coughing, blood on his lips. He roared in fury and swung again, shattering another helmet. Sparks flew as the pipe bent under the force, but there were too many. For every blow they landed, another claw or fist came back. The Vrek pushed them, forcing them step by step down the corridor. Daniel felt his strength fading. His pipe was dented, his arm bleeding badly. He stumbled, nearly falling, until Liara caught him, dragging him back to his feet. Her voice was sharp, desperate. Do not fall, Terran. The bond is not finished. Daniel looked at her, sweat running down his face. Bond? You still care about that now? Lyra's eyes burned fiercely. Yes, because if you live, and I am not alone. The words struck him harder than any blow. For the first time, he saw her not as a strange alien thief, but as someone broken, clinging to the only chance of survival she had left. Something inside him hardened. He gripped the pipe tighter. Then we don't die here. Not today. With a roar, Daniel charged forward, slamming the bent pipe straight into the chest of the nearest Vrek. At the same time, Liara leapt onto another's back, driving the knife deep into its throat. The corridor filled with blood and screams. When it was over, 3 bodies lay on the floor. The air stank of iron and smoke. Daniel fell to one knee, gasping for breath, his pipe broken in half. Liara stood over him, chest rising and falling, her furred ears drooping with exhaustion. But she was alive. He was alive. Daniel looked at her, his voice hoarse. Still think I'm not worthy? Lyra's eyes softened. She knelt down, pressing his own knife into his hands at last. Her fingers lingered on his, warm and trembling. You fight with fury. You fight with heart, she whispered. Terran, you are more than worthy. Before Daniel could answer, the ground shook again. A deep rumble echoed through the station, and from the far end of the hall came a sound worse than any growl. Before, heavy footsteps. Many of them. The true hunters were coming, and this time Daniel and Liara would face more than shadows. The hunters trapped. The rumble grew louder. Dust fell from the ceiling as the metal floor vibrated beneath Daniel's boots. He rose slowly, pipe still clutched in one hand, though it was bent nearly in half. Beside him, Liara tightened her grip on the blood-stained knife, her ears twitching, her tail bristling with tension. They're coming, Daniel muttered, his voice rough. Lyra's sharp eyes flicked to the darkness ahead. Not raiders, this time, hunters. Daniel frowned. What's the difference? She answered in a low whisper. Raiders rush for blood. Hunters. They plan, they stalk, they kill slow. The words sank into Daniel like cold steel. This wasn't just another fight. This was a trap being laid around him. The corridor stretched out like a throat, leading deeper into the dead station. The shadows seemed to pulse, alive, as though waiting for them to step forward. Daniel's instincts screamed at him. Every nerve in his body felt the same warning he had felt as a soldier back on Earth. the sense of being watched, hunted. He turned slowly, eyes darting to every flicker of movement. Then the sound came. A long, piercing screech cut through the air, vibrating the walls. It wasn't just a sound, it was a challenge. Lyra hissed under her breath, ears folding back. They know we are tired. They want us desperate. Daniel wiped the blood from his mouth, straightened his shoulders, and forced strength into his voice. Then let's show them what desperate humans can do. For a moment, Lyra stared at him, her glowing eyes unreadable. Then she gave a small, sharp smile. You speak like a warrior, Chief. Perhaps I chose well. Before Daniel could answer, the lights above them flickered and died. Total darkness swallowed the corridor. The hunters were here. Daniel's heart pounded. He swung the broken pipe in front of him, listening hard. Every sound echoed too loud his breath. The drip of water, the faint hum of failing machines. Then he heard claws. Slow, deliberate, circling them. Stay close, he whispered. Lyra pressed against his side, moving with silent grace. He could feel her warmth, the brush of her fur against his arm. For once, he was glad she hadn't left him. A shadow darted in front of them. Daniel swung, but hit only air. A growl came from behind. He turned, too slow. Something slammed into him from the side, claws tearing across his shoulder. Daniel roared in pain, smashing the pipe into the darkness. The blow connected, and a shriek of pain echoed through the hall. Light burst for a moment, a spark from broken wires, and Daniel saw it. The Vrek hunter towered above him, larger than the raiders, its scales dark and patterned like armor. Its jaws dripped with saliva, teeth long and sharp. Its eyes glowed red, locked on Daniel with cruel intelligence. It wasn't just attacking. It was enjoying this. Lyra lunged at its side, knife flashing. But another hunter dropped from above, slamming her to the floor. She cried out, twisting under its massive weight. Lyra! Daniel shouted. He leapt forward, ramming the pipe into the beast's head. Sparks flew as metal cracked against bone. The creature reeled back, giving Lyra a chance to roll free. She slashed its leg, forcing it to stumble, but more shadows moved in the dark. 3, 4, maybe more. They weren't just being hunted. They were surrounded. Daniel's breathing grew ragged. His body screamed in pain. He knew they couldn't fight like this, not against so many. We can't stay here. He growled. Lyra nodded quickly, panting. There is a maintenance shaft ahead. Small, they cannot all follow. And lead the way. They ran, boots pounding against metal, claws scraping close behind. Daniel swung wildly at any shadow that leapt too close. Lyra darted ahead, her knife slashing through another set of glowing eyes. Finally, they reached the shaft and narrow tunnel, barely wide enough for one person at a time. Lyra ducked inside, her tail disappearing into the darkness. Daniel followed, squeezing in just as a hunter lunged. Its claws scraped the metal frame, missing him by inches. The tunnel was tight, forcing them to crawl. Behind them, the hunters roared, their claws scraping against the shaft as they tried to follow. The sound of metal tearing filled the air. Daniel crawled faster, his breath ragged, his body aching. Lyra moved swiftly ahead, her glowing eyes. Guiding him through the dark. At last, they tumbled out into a wider chamber. It looked like an old control room, screens shattered, chairs broken, dust thick on every surface. Daniel collapsed against the wall, gasping for air. Blood soaked his sleeve, dripping down his arm. Lyra stood guard at the entrance, knife ready, ears twitching as the hunter's growls echoed closer. Daniel forced himself upright, his voice hoarse. We can't keep running. They'll wear us down. Layara turned to him, eyes fierce. Then we make this room our ground. Here we fight. Daniel met her gaze. Despite the blood, the fear, the exhaustion, he felt something else. Stirring inside him. Resolve. He nodded. Then let's turn their trap into ours. The growls grew louder. Heavy footsteps shook the floor. The hunters were coming. And this time, Daniel and Layara would not just survive. They would strike back. Fire in the dark. The control room shook as heavy footsteps pounded outside. The walls seemed to tremble with each growl. Daniel gripped the broken pipe tighter, his knuckles white. Layara crouched low beside him, knife flashing in the dim light. Her ears twitched with every sound, her tail lashing like a whip. "They are close," she whispered. "Too many." Daniel swallowed, his throat dry. His body screamed with pain, blood soaking through his torn shirt, but his mind was sharp. He had been a soldier once. He knew what to do when surrounded. You didn't wait. You struck first. He looked around the ruined control room, broken screens, dead consoles, rusted pipes, dust and wires everywhere. No weapons, no guns. Nothing except what they could make. "Help me," he said quickly. Layara tilted her head. "Help with what?" Daniel pointed at the wires hanging from the ceiling. "Electric. Dangerous. If we rip them free, maybe we can use them." Her eyes narrowed, but she nodded. Without another word, she leapt onto a broken console, slashing the wires with her knife. Sparks burst into the air, the crackling light blinding in the dark. Daniel yanked down more, ignoring the burn as one shocked. His palm. The growls were louder now. The hunters were in the hallway, scraping their claws against the walls, announcing their approach. They weren't rushing. They were toying with them. Daniel gritted his teeth. "Fine, let's play too." He dragged a loose metal chair to the doorway and jammed the sparking wires around it, turning the frame into a deadly trap. Lyra's ears twitched as she watched him. "You humans," she whispered, half in awe, "always turning scraps into weapons." Daniel gave a tight smile. "It's what we do." The door shook, a heavy slam. Then another. The hunters were testing the frame, waiting for the moment to break through. Layara crouched low, knife ready. Her golden eyes glowed in the dark, fixed on the doorway. "When it opens," she said softly, "they will rush." Daniel nodded. "Then we make them regret it." The final slam came with a roar, and the door burst inward, twisted off its hinges. A massive wreck hunter stormed through, its jaws wide, dripping with saliva. Daniel shouted, "Now!" The beast lunged straight into the sparking wires. Lightning exploded across its body. The smell of burning flesh filled the air as the creature convulsed, shrieking in rage and agony. It crashed to the ground, twitching, smoke rising from its scales. The others howled behind it. Enraged. Daniel raised the pipe, his voice steady. Round 2. Another hunter pushed through the doorway. Layara moved like lightning, leaping at its throat. Her knife sank deep, blood spraying across the floor. The beast swung wildly, but Daniel smashed its knee with the pipe, sending it crashing down. Layara finished it with a quick stab to the eye. More poured in 3 at once. The room filled with chaos. Daniel swung the pipe with every ounce of strength left in him, crushing one beast's jaw. Pain ripped through his shoulder, but he forced his body to move, slamming again and again until bone cracked. Layara danced around another, her knife flashing in quick, precise strikes, her tail whipping for balance. But they were too many. One slammed Daniel into the wall, claws digging into his chest. He roared, driving the broken pipe straight through its mouth. The beast gurgled and fell limp, but Daniel slid to the floor, gasping for air. "Daniel!" Lyra's voice was sharp, panicked. She spun, cutting down another hunter, then dropped beside him. "Get up! Do not stop now." He forced himself up, his body trembling, vision blurring. Not yet. Together, they stood back to back, the floor slick with blood, the room echoing with growls. The last two hunters circled, watching them with red, hungry eyes. Liara bared her fangs. "They think we are weak. They are wrong." Daniel tightened his grip on the pipe, his voice hoarse but steady. "Let's end this." The hunters lunged. Liara met one head-on, slashing its throat as it collided with her. She rolled under its weight and stabbed deep into its chest. The beast collapsed, twitching. Daniel faced the last one. It was the biggest, its scales thick, its eyes burning with fury. The creature roared and charged, claws raised high. Daniel didn't dodge. He stepped forward. The broken pipe met the beast's throat with a brutal thrust. The force of the charge carried both of them to the ground. The creature clawed at him, but Daniel twisted the pipe deeper, deeper until the beast gave a final shudder and lay still. Silence fell. Daniel lay on his back, chest heaving, blood dripping from his wounds. Liara staggered to him, her fur matted with sweat and blood, her golden eyes shining. "You fought like one of my people," she whispered. "No, better. You fought like more." Daniel gave a tired smile. "Yes, I learned fast." Liara knelt beside him, pressing a hand to his chest. "Rest now. But know this, from this moment, you are not prey. You are my equal, my chosen." Daniel blinked, too exhausted to answer. But somewhere deep inside, a strange warmth stirred. Not just survival, but something more. They had survived the hunters. But this was only the beginning. The price of blood. The room was silent, except for the sound of heavy breathing. The bodies of the wreck hunters lay twisted and smoking on the floor, the air filled with the sharp scent of blood and burnt flesh. Daniel leaned against the wall, clutching his side where deep claw marks had torn into him. His vision swam, his breath ragged. Every movement sent pain ripping through his body. Liara knelt beside him, her ears flat, golden eyes burning with worry. She pressed her hand against his wound, trying to stop the bleeding. Her fur was streaked with blood, some is, some not. "Stay with me," she hissed. "You cannot die here, not after all this." Daniel tried to laugh, but it came out as a weak cough. "I'm harder to kill than that." But even as he spoke, his body sagged. He knew the truth. He was losing blood fast. Lyra's knife clattered to the floor as she tore a strip from her cloak and pressed it hard to his wounds. "Quiet. Save your strength." Her hands moved quickly, steady despite the fear in her eyes. She was no healer, but she worked with fierce determination. Daniel watched her, fighting the urge to close his eyes. "You saved me back there," he whispered. Lyra's ears flicked. "We saved each other. That is how it must be." She glanced at the bodies of the hunters. "But they will not be the last. The wreck never stop. More will come." Daniel forced himself to sit up, biting back a groan. "Then we can't stay here." Liara nodded, but her eyes stayed fixed on him. "You bleed too much. If you walk, you may not make it." Daniel gave a tired smile. "And you'll just have to drag me." For the first time, a small laugh escaped her lips. It was sharp, but it carried a strange warmth. Human stubbornness. She said softly, "Perhaps that is what keeps you alive." She slid his arm over her shoulder, supporting his weight. Daniel gritted his teeth as they staggered out of the control room and into the dark corridor. Each step left a trail of blood. On the floor, the ship groaned around them, metal creaking in the silence. The only light came from flickering panels, casting long shadows that made the hall feel alive. Every sound made Lyra's ears twitch. Every vibration in the metal made Daniel's grip tighten on the broken pipe he still carried. They reached a maintenance bay, smaller and quieter. Lyra guided him to a corner, lowering him carefully onto the floor. "Rest," she ordered. Daniel shook his head. "We need to plan. Can't just sit." Lyra crouched in front of him, her golden eyes sharp. "Plan all you want, human. But if you die, no plan matters." She leaned closer, her voice low. "Your blood is the price of every step we take now. Do not waste it." Her words silenced him. He leaned back against the wall, closing his eyes for a moment, listening to her breathing beside him. Lyra studied him in the dim light. His face was pale, his shirt soaked red, but his eyes still held fire. That fire unsettled her, and yet it drew her in. No alien she had ever met carried that kind of defiance, even in the face of death. She reached out slowly, touching his hand where it rested limply on his knee. Her claws brushed his skin lightly. "You are strange," she whispered. "Any other would give up, but you fight, even when your body fails." Daniel opened his eyes, meeting her gaze. "Where I come from, giving up means letting others die too. We don't do that." Her throat tightened. She turned her face away, ears flicking, but she did not release his hand. The silence stretched between them until a distant sound broke at metal. Scraping against metal, Lyra's head snapped toward the noise. She grabbed her knife and stood, tail lashing. "They are moving again." Daniel forced himself upright, though his body screamed in protest. "Then we keep going." Lyra frowned. "You should not even be standing." He gave her a grim smile. "I don't have to stand. I just have to fight." For a moment, Lyra studied him. Then she nodded. "Very well. If you fall, I will carry you, but you will not fall." Together, they left the bay, moving deeper into the ship's dark heart. The corridor stretched before them like a throat of steel, shadows waiting to swallow them whole. Daniel leaned heavily on her, every step leaving another drop of blood behind. Lyra's grip on him tightened, her knife flashing in her free hand. Vrek would come. More hunters, more death. But as they walked, Daniel realized something. He was no longer fighting alone. And Lyra, for all her sharpness, was no longer just protecting herself. She was protecting him. It was a bond born in blood and fire. A bond neither of them had expected. And somewhere in the darkness ahead, it would be tested again. The final trial. The corridors grew darker the deeper they went. The lights above flickered like dying stars, throwing long shadows across the walls. Every step echoed, carrying the weight of fear and the promise of violence. Daniel's body ached with every movement. His wound burned, his vision blurred, but he pressed forward. Beside him, Lyra moved silently, knife in hand, her ears sharp and alert. Her tail flicked nervously behind her, betraying the tension she tried to hide. Then the sound came. Heavy footsteps, dozens of them. The Vrek were coming. Daniel leaned against the wall, forcing himself to stay steady. "This is it, isn't it?" he asked softly. Lyra's golden eyes flashed in the gloom. "The final hunt. They mean to finish what they started." A long growl echoed down the hall, deep and guttural. It wasn't just hunters. The Vrek war chief himself had come. Lyra's grip tightened on her knife. "He comes for me, for my bloodline." Daniel looked at her and managed a tired smile. "Then he'll have to get through me first." Before Lyra could answer, the Vrek appeared. Massive shapes filled the corridor, armored beasts with claws that glowed faintly in the dark. Their war chief stood at the center, towering over them. All his body marked with scars of countless battles. His eyes locked on Lyra, and his voice rumbled like thunder. "Foxchild, you should have died long ago. Tonight, your line ends." Liara stepped forward, her back straight, her knife raised. Not while I breathe. Daniel pushed himself up, gripping a broken metal pipe like a sword. His hands shook. His blood dripped on the floor, but his eyes blazed. The war chief laughed. And what is this? A human? Fragile, dying, weak. You dare stand with her? Daniel's voice was quiet, but steady. I'm not standing for her. I'm standing with her. The wreck roared and charged. The corridor exploded into chaos. Liara darted forward, her blade flashing. She moved like fire, weaving between enemies, striking with precision. Daniel fought with raw desperation, swinging the pipe with all the strength he had left. Every blow rattled his bones. Every step cost him blood, but he did not stop. Chief pushed through his soldiers, claws slashing, eyes burning with hatred. He aimed straight for Liara. Daniel saw it. He lunged, blocking the strike. The claws ripped across his chest, sending pain shooting through him, but he held his ground. Daniel! Liara cried, her voice breaking. He gritted his teeth, holding. The war chief back with the last of his strength. Finish this, Liara. Her eyes widened. For a heartbeat, she froze. Then her gaze hardened, her ears flattening against her head. With a cry that echoed like thunder, she leapt forward. Her knife flashed once, twice. The war chief staggered, roaring in rage. Liara twisted, driving the blade deep into his throat. The great beast collapsed, blood spilling across the steel floor. The other wreck froze, their leader's death breaking their will. One by one, they turned and fled into the shadows, their growls fading into silence. Liara stood over the war chief's body, her chest heaving, her golden eyes wide. Slowly, she turned back to Daniel. He was on his knees, the broken pipe clattering from his hand. Blood soaked his shirt, his breathing shallow. But his eyes were still open, still fixed on her. You did it, he whispered with a faint smile. Liara rushed to his side, dropping the knife, her hands trembling as she tried to stop the bleeding. No, we did it. Do not close your eyes. Not now. Not after this. Daniel's hand weakly touched hers. You'll be safe now. Her throat tightened. Not without you. Do you hear me, human? Not without you. For a long moment, silence hung in the air. Then Daniel coughed, a weak laugh escaping his lips. Guess you're stuck with me then. Liara let out a sharp breath that was almost a sob. She pressed her forehead against his, her golden eyes shining. Good, because I am not letting you go. The two of them sat in the quiet, surrounded by the fallen. The war was not over. The galaxy was still dangerous, cruel, and filled with enemies. But something had changed. They had faced death together and survived, not as hunter and prey, not as alien and human, but as something more. Daniel's strength finally gave out, and he leaned against her. Liara wrapped her arm around him, holding him close, her tail curling protectively around his legs. In that moment, in the cold silence of the ship, they were not just survivors, they were partners, and the galaxy would never forget what a human and a fox girl had done together.